Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, welcome to Outlaws of Thunder Junction spoilers. This will be the very last video number 7. We're going to be talking about unique cards found in the Commander decks. They were the last to be spoiled. I just want to talk about the things that are being introduced. Let's get started. First off, we Ride at Dawn. Legendary creature spells, you have Convoke. Whenever your commander attacks, create a 1/1 red merc with the ability. Very efficiently mana costed at 3 mana. If you don't know what Convoke does, you can tap creatures down to help pay for costs of the legendary spell you're trying to cast. If the creature that you're tapping shares a color with the legendary creature spell that you're casting, it can pay for a pip in its CMC. So keep that in mind. A lot of people forget that when they're playing with Convoke, but it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And if you're in a historic deck, seems like a pretty nice card for you. Greywater's Fixer. Each outlaw creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. I feel like the best Encore enabler we have is Arumi. Unfortunately, this guy isn't legendary, so this is like a strictly 99 creature. But the fact that it just gives a static ability to all outlaw creatures in your graveyard is pretty significant. And since you only have to pay a CMC, that seems pretty darn good. Like Arumi, you have to do a lot extra, like exiling stuff from your graveyard, but this just straight up gets you a temporary copy. Not bad. Discreet Retreat. Enchant land for 4. The land has add 2 mana of any one color, spend only to cast outlaw spells or activate abilities of an outlaw source. Whenever you cast your first outlaw spell each turn, draw a card and lose 1 life. They seem to be very cautious this set about ensuring things can only be done once per turn. This just seems like a too fair of an enchantment. It's already like pigeonholing you to only playing outlaws. Maybe it's just too much. But then again, we have things like Guardian Project and Beast Whisperer.
So why go back?
I don't know why they needed to have the clause of your first or you're limited to only once per turn, but this card does. Dead Before Sunrise. Until end of turn, outlaw creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain tap, deals damage equal to power to target creature. Pretty expensive for 4 mana. Since you can only deal damage to target creature, the spell's also very narrow, kind of like Discreet Retreat. Charred Grave Robber. An ETB, return target outlaw card from your graveyard to your hand, has escape for 5. When it escapes, comes in with a +1/+1 counter on it. The best part about this card is the ETB clause for its efficient cost. The fact that you get to do it again is pretty dope. Outlaws encompass a pretty large, I guess, creature typing. There's at least 4. I imagine this can find a niche place in any of those kinds of tribal decks, but who knows? Kind of depends on you, the player. I mean, there's probably more efficient things out there in black that do this, and you could probably put it into play over putting it in your hand. So I imagine this doesn't see too much play. Bounty Board. For 3 mana, you get a mana rock, tap 1 in it, put a bounty on target creature, activate only as a sorcery. Whenever a creature with bounty on it dies, each of the controller's opponents draws a card and gains 2 life. We haven't seen bounty counters in a while. I think there's 2 in the existence of Magic right now that do this. So that's kind of cool. Both of which kind of do this kind of weird effect where if the creature with the counter on it dies, benefits get handed out to all that person's opponents, so there's more incentivization. Back in Town, return X outlaw creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ooh, this card's pretty good actually. I love that it puts it directly into play and that you could hit several creatures. The only stipulation being is that they'd be an outlaw. Probably the best card we've seen so far from the 9 of the Mardu deck so far. Angelic Sellsword. Whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under control, create a 1/1 red merc. Whenever Angelic Sword attacks, if its power is 6 or greater, draw a card. Unfortunately, the mercs don't have haste. You might have to wait. I think there's cheaper and more efficient ways of getting a card advantage than this, so also kind of a miss in my opinion. Vhan, the Gold Waker. Outlaws you control have vigilance and haste. At the end of your combat on your turn, you may have treasures. You shall become 3/3 construct assassins. In addition to the other types until end of turn. This guy is pretty spectacular. I love this card a lot. Particularly I like the part where it's only till end of turn. You're less vulnerable to board wipes, and you could also put treasures in play give them all haste, same turn and attack with them. Because they also gain vigilance, you get to play aggressively, leave that mana up to interact on other people's turns. Dream Thief's Bandana. Whenever a equipped creature deals damage to a player, look at the top card of their library, then exile it face down. For as long as it's remained exiled, you may play it, and mana of any type may be spent to cast that spell. Equip for 1. Kind of reminds me of the monkey, just not as efficiently costed. That's it for the unique Mardu cards. By far, Vhan is the best card, and I already talked about the face commander cards. The face commander of this deck was Olivia, and I think Vhan just blows that out of the water. It's kind of like the Fallout deck where people secretly want to just play Mr. House over Caesar. I feel like this guy's going to have the same effect. I feel like more people are playing this than Olivia because Olivia kind of sucked. Tower Winder. Reach Death Touch for 2. When it enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a card named Command Tower. Reveal it. Put it in your hand, shuffle, search your library, shuffle. That's kind of fun. I feel like Command Tower is just a staple in Commander. Everybody plays it. Maybe not monocolor decks, but if you're in any color pairing beyond one color, there's no reason why you don't play Command Tower because it comes in on tap, taps for all your colors. It's just consistent, and there's nothing that is as good because anything beyond that has stipulations to it. Savvy Trader. An ETB, exile target permanent card from your graveyard. You may play a card for as long as it remains exiled. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast. Beyond its ETB trigger, which you could abuse, like in Ruin, it's a nice recovery option for those decks. And I also like that you get that coupon from anywhere. The only stipulation is it's on your hand, so this counts flashback, this counts casting stuff off the top of your library. One of my all-time favorite green cards that do that right now is Augur Bottom. This helps you reduce the cost of your creatures. The Hot House that recently came out, that also would be great with this guy. That lets you play enchantments and creatures and lands. Heartless Conscription. Exile all creatures for each card exiled this way. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Mana of any type can be spent to cast that spell. Exile Heartless Conscription. This is very similar to the Lord of the Rings card. This is not a till end of turn effect. Once you exile them, you always have access to those cards. Interesting theft card. Theming Varmint. Death Touch Lifelink. Oh, it adds 2 mana. This might be even better for theft decks. It's pretty good. Orochi the Soul Reaver. In Jutsu, whenever one or more creatures you control deal damage to a player, create a treasure token and manifest the top card of that player's library. It says to a player, doesn't matter how many creatures you attack with, the max number of treasures and manifest shenanigans you can get is 3 because there's only 3 opponents in a commander game. I like that as ninjutsu, so you could probably catch one, if not multiple people with their pants down with this. I also like that it's cheaper cost than it's hard cast. Smirking Spelljacker. Flash flying for 5. Enters the battlefield. Exile target spell and opponent controls. Whenever it attacks, if a card is exiled with it, you may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. There aren't a lot of things that can interact with uncounterable stuff. This is one of those things. Arcane Heist. You may cast a target instant or sorcery from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. That spell will be put into their graveyard, exile it instead, and it has Cipher. Oh god, we're bringing back Cipher. I feel like Cipher was one of those keywords that never came back because of how many issues came about it.
Damn you, Cipher!
But you basically add an ability to a card. It's like a mutate trigger that is just always there. Or enlist. Enlist is more temporary. This in Cipher is more permanent, like the mutate triggers. So in the case of Cipher, you take the text box of this card and you just slap it onto a particular creature, and whenever it deals damage, you get Arcane Heist again. I imagine there'll be a lot of rulebook flipping every time someone wants to play this card. Felix the 5 Boots. Menace Ward 2. Creature you control dealing combat damage to a player causes a triggered ability or permanent you control the trigger. That ability triggers an additional time. I love the flavor of this guy. I like that it has Ward 2. Protects itself a little bit. My advice to all of you, playing theft decks is very complicated, and playing combat triggers is also very complicated. It kind of depends on an honor system in that people can surrender whenever they want. People can be scummy and deny you combat triggers. I have it happen to me all the time when I play combat-related commanders on Moto when I'm playing with strangers. That's just how it is. They don't feel like they owe you anything. Lately, I've been trying to avoid combat damage triggers because I think I got screwed when I was playing Ansrag on my channel. I got screwed when I was playing Niv-Mizzet, the guild pack, and then it happened again when I was playing the Pride of the Hullclade. They just denied me a bunch of cards. And it caused me to lose the game. Going to be incentivizing people to surrender, especially when you're stealing their stuff. It's like one of the ultimate sins in Commander.
I don't want war. All I want is peace. Peace. Peace.
When I play theft decks, I don't target one person too hard. I spread the love, and that keeps people in the game. If they surrender while you've taken 20 permanents from that individual, they'll just scoop, and then all your effort will just evaporate into smoke. That's why I suggest when you steal stuff from people, take a little bit from everybody.
A little piece of Poland, a little piece of France, a little piece of Portugal, and Austria perchance.
If you can. Sometimes someone's a big threat and you have no choice but to force them to surrender, and by all means, that's perfectly fine in my book. Thunderclap Drake. Instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. You can sack it when you cast your next instant or sorcery this turn. Copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. That could be a pretty powerful effect. This is probably the most cracked out Goblin Electromancer we've gotten. This is just strictly better in every way. If in the right deck, you could probably break this. The first thing that comes to mind, the Giant, the one who has reduced costs based on the number of stuff you sacrifice. If you get an infinite sack loop going, the Dargo will have reduced his cost to just 1 red mana, and either they could string a really long cycle of stuff until they want to sack this and cast a instant or sorcery that would win them the game. Phyrexian Altar, that's infinite red mana, and they could probably get this to a high enough number where you could probably kill any number of people with any instant or sorcery with this Drake. Pretty fun. I guess in that scenario with Dargo, you'd have to introduce blue so you could run Thunderclap. Smoldering Stagecoach. Its power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Whenever Smoldering Stagecoach attacks, the next instant spell and the next sorcery spell you cast this turn each have Cascade. I can get behind this card because it's an attack trigger, doesn't suffer from having to deal damage, so if you attack with it, you're going to be guaranteed your trigger no matter what, even if people surrender. Makes me happy. It's just the effect. It's decent. Most instants and sorceries nowadays are really efficiently costed, so I imagine you're just going to cascade it into something cheaper, more efficient, and just a value play. Nothing too crazy with this. Pyretic Charge. Discard your hand, draw 4. For each card discard this way, creatures control get +1/+0 till end of turn. It also has plot 4, so you could save it for your rainy day when you want to alpha strike people. But then you telegraph that it's coming. I almost think it's better just to hard cast it from your hand. Then if people see this on deck, they're going to be nervous about you having a bunch of cards in hand. Nah. Lock and Load. Draw a card, then draw a card for each other instant and sorcery spell you cast this turn. This is another Storm deck piece. I imagine people who play Storm will appreciate this a lot. When you're playing Storm, you have 2 problems: making enough mana to cast all your spells and drawing enough cards to get your cast count high. And this will do it for you. Well, it'll at least fix your card advantage problem. You can telegraph this by plotting it. Normally, you're not casting big stuff like this until you have the right setup going for you, so plotting it is perfectly okay. Leyline Dowser. Tapping 1 in it, mill a card. You may put an instant or sorcery card milled this way into your hand. Tap an untapped legendary creature control, untap Leyline Dowser. Because the card you return has to be an instant or sorcery, I would only play this in Spellslinger decks. I wouldn't play this in probably anything else, unfortunately. Very limited in the decks that I'll see. Forger's Foundry. You just stockpile your instants and sorceries, and then when you want to cash in and use them all again, you can. If you do go for the 5 mana ability, you will get to put those spells back in your graveyard, which might be significant. They don't get exiled. If you wanted to keep looping your stuff over and over, you still have the opportunity in the future. Eris, Roar of the Storm. Cost 2 less for each different mana value among instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Flying and Prowess. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 4/4 dragon. Because you want to be casting your second spell each turn, you want all your instants and sorceries to be cheap. So that means less consistency with reducing the cost of this card, unless you want to risk it. And then if you do start including really expensive instants and sorceries, it's a little bit of a nombo with the bottom ability where you won't be making the dragons as consistent. So
That would be counterproductive, sir.
if the give or take, that's probably why this card won't see a whole lot of play. It's just too disjointed. Elemental Eruption. Create a 4/4 red dragon elemental creature token with flying and prowess. Has Storm. Oh, the dragons that this guy makes also have prowess. That's kind of cool. Crackling Spellslinger. ETB. If you cast it, the next instant or sorcery you cast turn also has Storm. Man, this has 5 mana, so pretty darn expensive. If you're in a Storm deck and you're making a ton of mana, maybe it doesn't matter how expensive she is. Be interested to see how this card fits into people's decks. If it does, this is the first card ever printed that gives another card Storm. Probably its significance in the world of Commander. Vengeful Regrowth. For 6 mana, return up to 3 target land cards from your to the battlefield taps. Create that many 4/2 green plant warrior tokens with reach. Also has flashback for 8. Since you're ramping a bunch, getting to that flashback doesn't seem too unrealistic. In fact, you'll be able to pay for it if you do have 3 lands in your graveyard, because you go from 6 mana to 9. So it literally pays for itself. I like that. Sand Scout. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent has more lands than you, search your library for a desert, while on battlefield tap. Whenever one or more land cards are put in your graveyard from anywhere, create a 1/1 red, green, and white Sand Warrior token. Triggers only once a turn. It's basically Hazazon. The original only gave you temporary Sand Warrior tokens, and then the newest one, they're more permanent. Those are the only 3 cards that produces tokens that are 3 colors. Something you could pair up with this is Knight of Nualar. It gives +1/+1 for each of a card's colors. Real fun to play in Hazazon. I guess now pair up with this guy or girl. I think it's a girl. Rumbleweed. Costs 1 less for each land card in your graveyard. Vigilance, Reach, a Trample. When it enters the battlefield, other creature control get +3/+3 trample till end of turn. Another overrun effect. I guess I could play this in a landfall deck of some kind. The cost reduction's nice. The dream would be to cast this for 1 green mana, but that would mean you have close to a third of the lands in your library in your graveyard, so it's probably not a good situation to be in. Or maybe it is. Maybe you got a really fat scape shift off, and then you could follow up with this and kill people. Kiri, Talented Sprout. Other plants and tree folk you control get +2/+. So, maybe your post-combat main phase, return target plant, tree folk, or land from your graveyard to your hand. It's a nice little value thing. Most plants have 0 power in their stats, but I mean, even tree folk, they're known for having big butts and not a lot of power. Fixes both creature types pretty effectively. And then the recursion piece is nice. It happens post-combat main phase, meaning the turn you play it, you'll get your stuff back. Embrace the Unknown. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until end of your next turn. You may play those cards, and it has Retrace. I love impulse effects, and I love that you could do it again by discarding a land. There's only a handful of these in the game of Magic, and putting on a card advantage spell seems really good. Always withhold your land drops, so if you hit 2 lands, you'll only be able to play 1 if you already made your land drop, and then you miss out on value. Dune Chanter. Lands you control and lands you own that aren't on the battlefield are deserts in addition to its other types. Lands you control have tap add 1 of any color, and then you could tap at the mill 2 cards. You gain 1 life for each land card milled this way. Since the commander of this deck cares about deserts, and Hazazon also cares about deserts, this card is really handy. There's not a lot of deserts in the game. This set did introduce a couple, at least 4 or 5 in the Naya color pairings. It still feels kind of light. Like, I think most people don't feel good about playing tapped lands, especially when they only tap for 1 color, and most of them do. This set is the first to introduce 2 colored lands that are also deserts. You'll have a lot of issues with your mana base in that you'll be foregoing a lot of tempo with your tapped mana.
This desert is stupid.
This guy fixes that problem. Cataclysmic Prospecting. Deals X damage to each creature. For each mana from a desert spent to cast a spell, create a tap treasure token. The treasures come in taps, so you can't use it that turn and, you know, get your investment back and string multiple spells together. They probably did that on purpose. Angel of Indemnity. Oh god. Indemnity. There we go. Oh god, I feel like I'm in Finding Nemo. Sea Anemone. Same thing. At least I could pronounce that right the first time. When it enters the battlefield, you return target permanent with mana value of 4 or less from your to the battlefield. Most of these effects are 3 or less. It also has Encore. If you pull that off, you'll return 3 instead of just 1 permanent. Cactus Preserve. ETB comes untapped. May add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. And then for 3 mana until end of turn, it becomes a XX green plant, where X is the greatest mana value among your commanders. It's still land. Well, if you're playing this in Hazazon, this would get really big. I guess even in this base deck, the commander is pretty big as well, so nice fitting of a activated ability from a land. I hope you enjoyed the entire spoiler review of Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Like I said, I've done 7 videos up to this point. This is the last one. Subscribe, because I'm going to build at least 12 decks from this set, and I can't wait for you to see what I come up with. Maybe inspire some of you, and then play them on the channel and see how it all shakes out. Not only do I talk the talk, I also like to walk the walk, I guess you could say. I take a lot of pride in what I do. I do it not only as a way to entertain myself and entertain you, as I want to make players stronger competitively, and I want to do so in a way that is affordable to everyone. If you liked the sound of that, watch some future content. Take care now. Bye.